the morning of Elvis's death, your mother woke up and knew instinctively that something was off. You want to tell us about that? She's 9 years old.
Yeah.
There is one test that would settle this entire argument in under 2 weeks, and it has never been taken. For nearly 50 years, one of the biggest mysteries in American pop culture has been hiding in plain sight, not in Graceland's locked rooms, but in the systematic refusal to answer a single provable question. The theory that Pastor Bob Joyce is actually Elvis Presley sounds absurd at first. Most people dismiss it with a laugh and scroll past. But when you start examining what we know versus what we refuse to know, the story gets darker and more fascinating, and the silence becomes deafening. What started as a fringe internet conspiracy has metastasized into a genuine cultural phenomenon, not because the evidence is overwhelming, but because the non-evidence is so carefully maintained. Think about that distinction. We are not dealing with lack of proof. We are dealing with the active prevention of proof. In Benton, Arkansas, there is a man who leads a small congregation called Household of Faith Church. His name is Robert Wayne Joyce. Every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, approximately 100 people gather to hear him preach the gospel. He reads scripture, delivers sermons rooted purely in faith doctrine, and then he sings. And when he sings, something happens that the entire internet cannot explain away. The moment his voice fills that sanctuary, something shifts in the collective consciousness of millions of people who have seen the videos. Videos of him performing How Great Thou Art, the exact same hymn Elvis recorded in 1967, have generated tens of millions of views across YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. The vocal characteristics are not approximate. They are not similar. They are, by any acoustic measure, nearly identical. Professional Elvis tribute artists, people who have spent entire careers studying and replicating his vocal technique, have publicly stated that they cannot match what Bob Joyce produces without deliberate impersonation. And Bob Joyce is not doing an impersonation. He is singing like he has always sung. Side-by-side audio comparisons have been overlaid millions of times. The vibrato, the breath control, the way certain notes are bent and held, the emotional delivery, everything points to a physiological impossibility unless one of two things is true. Either an unknown gospel pastor has by pure coincidence developed the most perfectly matching vocal signature to the most famous singer who ever lived. Or the most famous singer who ever lived is standing in a pulpit in rural Arkansas every single Sunday. When you look at him, the physical similarities are equally striking. He has silver hair, heavier build, the same facial bone structure, the same jawline. He is left-handed, which Elvis was. His stage presence, the way he moves during sermons, the gestures, the pauses between phrases. The head tilts, all of it carries an unmistakable echo of someone who spent 40 years performing on the world's biggest stages. Not even the best Elvis impersonator sings like Bob Joyce. But here is where the argument collapses into something far more interesting than mere physical resemblance. Bob Joyce has been asked, repeatedly and directly, whether he is Elvis Presley. And his answer has always been the same: no, he is not. He was born in 1952. He has been married to his wife Willina since 1975. They have children together. He has a documented life history separate from Elvis. All of that is on the record. But the denials have never truly satisfied the internet, and not because they lack credibility, but because of something far more subtle. There are specific things Bob Joyce has said from his pulpit that carry too much specificity to be coincidental. He has spoken about the evils of the entertainment industry with a weight that goes beyond theological standard preaching. He discusses fame as a spiritual trap with the kind of lived authority that comes from personal experience rather than study. And then occasionally, almost casually, he mentions details that send his online following into overdrive. In one widely discussed moment, Joyce mentioned that as a boy, he received a $10 guitar. That specific detail mirrors one of the most famous stories from Elvis Presley's childhood in Tupelo, Mississippi. His parents scraped together just enough money to buy him a cheap guitar from a pawn shop. Whether Bob Joyce was drawing from his own memory or unconsciously echoing someone else's story is impossible to determine. And that ambiguity is exactly what keeps the theory alive. Elvis Presley grew up in the Assembly of God Church. He recorded gospel albums throughout his career. All 3 of his Grammy Awards came from gospel recordings, not rock and roll. The books Riley Keough found on her grandfather's nightstands dealt with Christian theology, Eastern mysticism, and spiritual practice. The secret meditation room he had built inside Graceland was designed for prayer and silent reflection. If you believe that Elvis survived and needed a new identity, then the notion that he would become a gospel pastor carries an internal logic that resists easy dismissal. Because the music Elvis loved most, the music he kept returning to throughout his life, was gospel. Gospel is the music Bob Joyce performs every single Sunday. This is where the story should end, and where it refuses to end. The simplest possible resolution exists. It is available. It is completely within reach. 1 DNA test. 1 fingerprint comparison. 1 biological confirmation or refutation would resolve this entire debate that has raged for years across social media platforms, conspiracy forums, and among Elvis researchers. That test has never happened. Why? Bob Joyce has never submitted to DNA analysis. He has never agreed to fingerprint identification. He has never provided the kind of definitive biological proof that would terminate this conversation permanently. And while a private citizen certainly has the constitutional right to refuse such requests, and no legal mechanism exists to compel him, the fact that the simplest solution to a decades-long cultural mystery remains systematically untaken is the silence that generates the loudest noise. 1 test would settle it forever. That test does not exist. The refusal itself has become the evidence for believers. Because if he is just Bob Joyce, an Arkansas pastor with no connection to Elvis Presley, why refuse? The answer could only strengthen his position. It could end the speculation. It could provide absolute proof of his identity and shut down the entire theory permanently. Unless, the believers argue, he cannot afford that test to happen. Unless the results would create a problem rather than solve one. Silence has become the loudest argument. Then in 2023, something happened that escalated the mystery into new territory. Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only child, died on January 12th following cardiac arrest at her home in Calabasas, California. She was 54 years old. 10 days later, a public funeral was held at Graceland. It was massive. Thousands of mourners attended. The service was live-streamed on Graceland's official website. There were performances, eulogies, remarks from Priscilla Presley. In the crowd, captured in a photograph taken from a distance, stood a white-haired man in a dark suit. Within hours, that photograph had spread across every Elvis fan community on the internet, because the man in the image looked unmistakably like Pastor Bob Joyce. Believers were certain they had caught him. Finally, they thought, visible proof that he had traveled to Memphis for the funeral of someone connected to Elvis's bloodline. The theory seemed to have cracked open. And then it was debunked. A YouTube channel called Caffeinated by Elvis investigated the image and identified the man as Andy Childs, a country music singer with documented connections to the Presley estate. His presence at the funeral was entirely expected and easily explained. His credentials were verified. The debunking was solid. But the emotional impact of that brief moment, when millions of people believed they had finally caught the king, revealed something profound about how this theory has embedded itself into the collective consciousness. People wanted it to be true. They needed it to be true. And that need tells you something about Elvis's grip on human psychology nearly 50 years after his death. Because the alternative, that Elvis simply died alone on a bathroom floor at 42, and that was the complete end of the story, has never felt sufficient for a person who meant that much to so many people. We are not dealing with logical assessment anymore. We are dealing with humanity's refusal to accept finality. But then, something else happened that made the silence even more confounding. Priscilla Presley, Elvis's ex-wife and the closest living connection to his life and death, was asked about these conspiracy theories in various interviews over recent years, and her response was strategically ambiguous. She did not deny them outright. One widely quoted remark attributed to her is, "Sometimes the past finds its own voice." Believers did not interpret this as a dismissal. They interpreted it as a coded acknowledgement. Whether Priscilla intended that particular reading or not, her refusal to categorically shut the door has poured fuel onto a fire that was already burning. Then, in October 2024, the fuel poured became a wildfire. Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter and now the sole owner of Graceland, sat down with Oprah Winfrey for an exclusive interview. She was filmed inside the white living room of Graceland itself, the same room where Elvis entertained presidents and movie stars. And she said something no member of the Presley family had ever articulated publicly before. She described the upstairs of Graceland in extraordinary personal and emotional detail. It's rooms that have been locked and completely untouched since August 16, 1977, the day Elvis was found dead on his bathroom floor. For over 40 years, no tourist, no camera crew, no documentary film team, and no journalist has been allowed past that staircase. Riley confirmed that the clock above Elvis's bed remains frozen at the exact moment paramedics arrived at the house. The silk sheets on his bed have never been changed. His prescription medication bottles still sit on one nightstand, some of them full, while a Bible covered in his handwritten annotations sits on the other. She then described finding a shoebox beneath his bed labeled, "Do not open." Inside were unsent letters. One was addressed to her mother, Lisa Marie. Another was written simply to "Whoever finds this after I'm gone." Riley has refused to release those letters publicly, but she has acknowledged that reading them changed how she understands her grandfather as a person. And then she revealed something that astounded researchers and believers alike. She described a small room at the very end of the upstairs hallway that she calls the quiet room. It had low lighting, cushions on the floor, and an old sound machine producing a soft hum. Elvis had it built as a private meditation space, a place where he would go to pray or simply sit in silence away from the chaos of his own fame. No official Graceland literature has ever mentioned this room. Until Riley spoke about it in 2024, the world did not know that this space existed. 20 million visitors walked through Graceland over those decades. Researchers, journalists, biographers, and obsessive fans studied every inch of the property. None of them knew that hidden room was there. If Elvis Presley could hide an entire room from the world for that long, what else could he have hidden? And that question leads directly to Benton, Arkansas, and to a small church on Samples Road, where a man named Bob Joyce opens his mouth every Sunday morning and sings gospel hymns with a voice that has shaken the internet to its core. This is the moment where reasonable people disagree, because we have reached the point where the question is no longer about evidence for the Bob Joyce theory. The question has become about evidence against it. And that evidence has never been provided with absolute certainty. The official records of Elvis Presley's death contain documented gaps. When Elvis was found unresponsive on August 16, 1977, he was transported not to Methodist South Hospital, which was less than 2 miles from Graceland, but to Baptist Memorial Hospital, 15 miles away. The initial cause of death was ruled as cardiac arrhythmia. Toxicology reports found multiple prescription medications in his system. His personal physician, Dr. George Nikopoulos, was later charged with overprescribing medications to Elvis and other patients, though he was ultimately acquitted. Vernon Presley, devastated by the loss of his only son, ordered a second private autopsy and then signed off on having the full results sealed for 50 years. That sealed report is now scheduled for public release on August 16, 2027, the 50th anniversary of Elvis's death. In 1982, ABC's program 2020 took the case all the way to the Tennessee Supreme Court to demand access to those documents, and the court denied the request. The papers have remained locked ever since. The gravestone at the meditation garden reads Elvis Aaron Presley, but his original birth certificate spells his middle name as Aaron, a deliberate choice his parents made to echo the middle name of his stillborn identical twin brother, Jesse Garon Presley. Elvis later preferred the biblical Aaron spelling and considered having it legally changed, and Vernon chose that spelling for the tombstone. But conspiracy theorists have treated the discrepancy as a coded signal for decades. Attendees at Elvis's open casket funeral described the body as looking waxy, and some reported seeing what appeared to be beads of sweat on the face. This led to persistent claims that the body in the casket was a wax figure, kept cool by an elaborate system hidden inside the solid copper casket, which was so heavy it required 8 pallbearers to carry it. J.D. Sumner, one of Elvis's backup singers, dismissed these claims by explaining that the copper construction alone accounted for the weight and the $15,000 price tag. But the theory did not die. 9 days after the initial burial at Forest Hill Cemetery, 3 men attempted to steal the body, reportedly bringing explosives to blow open the mausoleum. The attempt failed, but it prompted the family to petition for reburial on the Graceland grounds. And now, the 2027 autopsy release date hangs over this entire story like a countdown that nobody can stop and everybody is watching. If those documents contain inconsistencies, unexplained details that contradict the official narrative, or medical findings that raise new questions, the Bob Joyce theory will receive the most significant boost to its credibility that it has ever had. And if the documents confirm the official account cleanly and completely, then the theory should logically die. Whether it actually will is another question entirely. Because theories like this one do not survive on evidence alone. They survive on silence. They survive on unanswered questions. They survive on the refusal to provide definitive answers when answers are available. Riley Keough became the sole owner of Graceland on August 4, 2023. The transition followed a legal dispute with her grandmother Priscilla Presley over a 2016 amendment to the family trust, which was eventually settled out of court. At her age, Riley now manages an empire that includes tourism revenue, image licensing, merchandise, exhibit partnerships, and a growing digital preservation program that uses high-resolution scanning and AI-based metadata tagging to archive Elvis's handwritten lyrics, set lists, and personal letters. She has spoken in extraordinary emotional detail about her grandfather's hidden rooms, his unsent letters, his private notebooks filled with reflections on fame and loneliness, and a secret meditation space that nobody knew existed. She has finished her mother's memoir using Lisa Marie's personal audio recordings to reconstruct stories about growing up at Graceland, about childhood trauma, about being shaped permanently by a father who died when she was 9 years old. Riley has addressed alleged secret heirs. She has navigated legal challenges. She has refused to open the second floor to tourists or cameras. She has rejected reality television offers and fictional dramatizations. She has controlled the Presley narrative with a discipline and precision that would make any corporate communications executive envious. Every word she speaks publicly about her grandfather feels measured, intentional, and carefully considered. And in all of that meticulous stewardship, across every interview and every public statement, and every carefully worded remark, she has never once mentioned the name Bob Joyce. Complete and total silence on the most viral Elvis Presley conspiracy theory of the 21st century. From the one person on Earth who would definitively know the answer if there were any truth to the claim. Elvis's final known studio sessions took place in the Jungle Room at Graceland during February and October of 1976. Those recordings produced tracks like Way Down and Moody Blue and raw gospel covers that session musicians later described as deeply experimental. Rika released some of this material after his death, but his former producer Felton Jarvis stated publicly that Elvis recorded far more than the label ever put out. He referenced late-night tapes and rough piano sessions that Elvis deliberately kept off the radar because he did not want anyone hearing them, possibly ever. A former estate employee claimed anonymously in a fan forum that a reel-to-reel tape player was found in Elvis's upstairs study alongside a small stack of unlabeled tapes. There is no official confirmation from the estate, but the claim aligns with known facts about Elvis's habit of recording himself singing casually at home, sometimes to evaluate his own voice, sometimes to share rough drafts with collaborators he trusted. Riley Keough has confirmed that the upstairs rooms contain personal artifacts that have never been catalogued or shown publicly. Archivists working with the estate have acknowledged that certain storage areas, particularly in the bedroom and study, have not been fully digitally archived. That includes documents, books, tapes, and materials they describe only as unreleased. What is on those tapes? What do those letters say? What is in those storage areas? The Bob Joyce theory may never be resolved through conventional investigation. There is no verified DNA match. There is no fingerprint comparison. There are no confirmed communications between Joyce and any member of the Presley family. Elvis Presley's death was documented, autopsied, witnessed by family, and memorialized in a public funeral attended by thousands. Bob Joyce has denied the connection plainly and repeatedly. And yet the theory will not die, because it is not sustained by evidence alone. It is sustained by every question that has never received an answer, every room that has never been opened, every test that has never been taken, every sealed document that remains locked, every word that Riley Keough has chosen very carefully never to say. The theory survives on what we do not know. It thrives on what we are not permitted to know. And it will persist until someone decides that the truth matters more than the silence. So here is my question for you. If you were absolutely certain of an answer, would you hide it forever? Or would you want the world to know? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and let Crime Brief know whether you think the evidence for Bob Joyce points to truth or whether you believe it all points to nothing but coincidence. What do you think the August 2027 autopsy release will reveal? Thanks for watching Crime Brief.